Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the recent arrest of Sam Bankman Fried, SBF, as he's better known, in this whole FTX debacle. Kind of the focus of today's story is going to be the interesting timing of the government deciding to issue an arrest warrant for and have the Bahamian police arrest Sam Bankman Fried literally hours, less than 24 hours before he was set to testify in front of Congress. We're going to be taking a look at an article from Zero Hedge titled "The Justice Department Faces Questions After Effectively Preventing Bankman Fried from Testifying in Congress." Right, the timing of that was kind of weird. We'll talk about both sides, like why it's suspicious and why it might be normal for them to do this. And then also we'll talk a little bit about the hearings. I was listening to them earlier. I plan on listening to the rest of them. I'm only about, I don't know, maybe about a quarter of the way through. And overall, I find it to be pretty boring. You know, it's pretty clear that none of these congressmen or congresswomen actually know anything about crypto. And nobody's really asking any real questions. Nobody's actually really trying to get to the bottom of anything. What it appears to me is you have a bunch of old congressmen and congresswomen who don't have a clue what the fuck they're talking about, but they want to sound intelligent. So they basically repeat things that people said. So who's the new CEO of FTX is John Ray. And there was he kind of got up and kind of gave his little opening speech or address of what went on. And he kind of talked about, he said, in trying to understand FTX and kind of like the division of the company and how things were set up, he said we basically, I forget the exact word he used, but he said we basically broke the entire organization into four pillars. He said, one pillar is the U.S. or the domestic customers, like the Binance.us or FTX.us. He said another one is the international customers and the international platform. So basically, FTX.com that international people could use. He said the third segment that they broke it down into was, I think it was like creditors or partners or Alameda or something like that. And the fourth one was investments that the company made. He said, there was really no division. Money was shared around. Sam Bankman Fried owned the vast majority, if not all of these companies, all of these platforms. He owned FTX. He owned FTX.com. He owned 90% of Alameda Capital. But he said, money was shared, passwords were shared, employees was shared. He said, there was really no division between different companies. This was all one big kind of conglomerate. But he was just kind of trying to outlay how he went about trying to understand the company and kind of all the parts involved. And then so you had a bunch of Congress people get up and be like, so you talked about four different pillars of the company. Can you, and kind of like basically repeated everything that he said and then said, can you explain how these four different pillars might be able to get money back for customer? It was basically, you're not hearing anything. You're hearing a bunch of people who like to hear themselves talk. So let's talk about the timing of Sam Bankman Fried's arrest, coming less than 24 hours before he was set to testify. Now, one thing we have seen from Sam Bankman Fried, typically when you're in trouble, what do? You keep your mouth shut, right? Like you don't say anything. We've all heard, obviously different scenario, but we've all heard, what you say can and will be used in the court of law. You're not going to dig yourself out of any holes. The only thing you can potentially do is incriminate yourself. That's why attorneys don't like people convicted of something giving interviews, speaking to the public, answering questions. And Sam Bankman Fried has gone on a couple of different podcasts, has said some things on Twitter, and he's basically incriminated himself time and time and time again. It's pretty clear that he either is autistic or has Asperger's, and I think he kind of has diarrhea of the mouth and doesn't understand that he should just shut the fuck up. And so he kind of continues digging himself a deeper hole and a deeper hole, and also looking more unsympathetic to, I guess, kind of in the general public's eyes as well as to the court. So why wouldn't you want Sam Bankman Fried to come in front of Congress? He's literally going to spill the beans. He's going to say everything wrong that he did. He's going to further incriminate himself, and you're going to have an even bigger case against him. So it's weird why you wouldn't want this to happen. Well, could it be that maybe his parents were involved? We know that he was the second largest biggest donor to the Democratic Party. We know that FTX was used to set up crypto donations in Ukraine. We know that Ukraine historically has been the most corrupt country in the world. Maybe all this money that the U.S. is sending over to Ukraine, here we're getting like into some far out conspiracies, but crazier things have happened. Maybe this was some type of big money laundering operation to get money back to Democratic politicians, or even just politicians in general, maybe of both parties. But it's there's plenty of reasons why a lot of very important people might not want Sam Bankman Fried talking about his operation, his relationship with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one angle where it's weird. The angle where, okay, this might be kind of a normal thing. Some people have said by letting Sam Bankman Fried remain out of custody and continue to talk and talk and talk, he's potentially, quote unquote, poisoning the jury pool. Maybe they think him saying less is better, right? Like if he's all over the media, all over talking, trying to make the case that, he's just a stupid guy. He didn't mean to steal anybody's money. He's just unorganized. Maybe he can kind of pollute the jury pool, seeing as how the media is letting him run around on this, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm just an idiot tour, right? But let's kind of get into this article from Zero Hedge. The Justice Department faces questions after effectively preventing Sam Bankman Fried from testifying in Congress. And you could tell that Maxine Waters seemed a little bit upset about this. The arrest of Sam Bankman Fried yesterday was sudden and unexpected in light of Bankman Fried's plan to testify before Congress. As a criminal defense attorney, my reaction to the arrest last night remains unchanged. This is the first time I can recall where prosecutors moved aggressively to stop a defendant from making self-incriminating statements. His testimony would have been entirely admissible and likely devastating at trial. I previously wrote how Sam Bankman Fried was doing harm in his case by speaking in the media and to Congress, so why would the Justice Department move to stop the self-inflicted damage? You have a major target who is about to voluntarily testify for hours. That is ordinarily a dream for prosecutors, but the Justice Department moved quickly to prevent that from happening. At that stage, Bankman Fried was not charged or in custody. He was not protected by Miranda or other constitutional rules from self-incriminating statements. Indeed, some of us had already warned that he was causing himself considerable damage in making such statements. This was a defendant with a large legal team facing possible criminal charges who seemed eager to speak about his actions and motivations. Most prosecutors would sit back, make popcorn, and watch this all unfold. The curious move led many to question whether the Biden administration was eager to prevent Bankman Fried's political contribution, was eager to prevent questions on Bankman Fried's political contributions and associations. We know he was seen on stage with Bill Clinton. He went to that New York Times speaking event, or I guess he, live streamed in, but he was at that New York Times speaking event with Janet Yellen and Zelensky, and I forget who else, somebody else important. He had ties to a lot of people in the Democratic Party. He had 7 Democratic senators and 1 Republican senator trying to shut down investigations into him, all who he gave donations to. And I talked about this in yesterday's video, but it's kind of pathetic how little money it takes to buy off a politician. I mean, we're talking somewhere between $1,300 and $7,000, and you had politicians trying to act against the interest of victims of FTX and shield Sam Bankman Fried from an investigation. So back to the article. The curious move led many to question whether the Biden administration was eager to prevent questions on Bankman Fried's political contributions and associations. He was the second highest donor to the Democrats to Democratic causes in the last election cycle. His mother, a law professor at Stanford, also heads a major Democratic campaign fund. It's also possible that the Justice Department simply wanted to show the public that it was moving aggressively despite his close Democratic ties. It may have secured sufficient evidence, including possible cooperating witnesses, to satisfy the basis for charges and an extradition request. And we did know that, and I talked about this in yesterday's video, and you guys have probably seen photos surface online, but images surfaced last week of Caroline Ellison of Alameda in New York City. So it was weird that she came back and he didn't. He had kind of been trying to blame her and throw her under the bus. Is she maybe in New York giving evidence against Sam Bankman Fried? Back into the article, yet that still does not explain why the Justice Department would not want to hear a full account from Sam Bankman Fried before effectively shutting him down as a criminal defendant. This is the first time that I can recall where the prosecutors, rather than the defense counsel, moved effectively to muzzle a defendant. Whatever the motivation, the timing of the charges effectively stopped the windfall of information coming from Bankman Fried. This article that I'm reading, it's got a picture of Bankman Fried with Bill Clinton. We know what happens to people who are involved with the Clintons. Will Sam Bankman Fried wind up being Epsteined? It would be too crazy if that actually happened. It would absolutely be too crazy if Sam Bankman Fried was suicided. But really, what would happen? Oh my gosh, guys, we don't know what happened. Like the two guards who were supposed to be watching him, they just disappeared during this 30 minutes. Oh, well, that's okay. We got tape of it. Oh my gosh, the videotapes malfunctioned during this. That's crazy. It would be too crazy. But like, really, what would really happen? We're kind of like, as a society, we're kind of gaslit with a lot of these ridiculous stories over and over, and nothing ever happens. Nobody's held accountable. So it would just be kind of funny at this point. Back into the article, whatever the motivation, the timing of the charges effectively stopped the windfall of information coming from Sam Bankman Fried. Bankman Fried is accused of diverting customer funds from the start of his cryptocurrency exchange to support his hedge fund, Alameda Research. He is also accused of using his fraudulent practices to fund a lavish lifestyle, buy real estate, make venture investments, and fund Democratic causes. Sam Bankman Fried had also funded a study that wound up showing that ivermectin was not effective. He was also funding various other COVID studies. I believe in the hearings that came out today that he and a lot of the higher-ups at FTX wound up going on a spending binge, I think in 2021, and spent nearly $5.1 billion on real estate, houses for his parents. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody else gets dragged into this as well as if his parents wind up going down too. The range of charges include wire fraud conspiracy, securities fraud conspiracy, and money laundering. The details of those transactions might have been voluntarily disclosed under intense cross-examination if the administration allowed him to appear as a witness. Moreover, Bankman Fried was already causing himself considerable harm in media interviews. Bankman Fried's parents have left Stanford and are reportedly in the Bahamas with their son. They could themselves face questions. His father, Joseph Bankman, is a tax professor and was a paid employee of his son's company. His mother reportedly worked with him on some of the massive donations to Democrats. The parents are reportedly now concerns that the legal cost in the case could wipe them out. Bankman Fried has admitted that only a few hours of efforts a day might have avoided these losses. It sounds like a true millennial my bad defense that will not fly in court, and building on the defense might have sealed his fate. And one of the things that Sam Bankman Fried had said recently when they asked him about the accounting of this business, not only was he the accountant, but the business had no books. He kept a loose record in his head. And think about how crazy this is. Now, for any business, this would be crazy, but especially when you get into the financial services industry, the types of reporting requirements and regulations are quite strict, right? Like, not only are you required to keep records, to make those records available to FinCEN and other departments, you have to keep these records, I believe, for a period of 5 years. I mean, there's so much that goes into reporting requirements and regulation and things like that. And for Sam Bankman Fried to just be, quote unquote, keeping the books in his head is just fucking insane. Let's see. So we talked about the my bad defense won't fly in court. Back into the article, the question is why the Justice Department moved to stop Bankman Fried as he worked so hard to make the criminal case against himself. He comes across badly in these past interviews like a trophy-laden millennial who believes that he just needs to play to win. It's not quite that easy in a criminal case. If he testified, Bankman Fried could not only have made any criminal defense more difficult, but he could have potentially tripped the wire for alleged false or misleading statements under oath. It was a target-rich environment for Congress and a potential bonanza for prosecutors. Bankman-Fried was in a dangerous freefall despite his legal team. Bankman-Fried seemed to be praying for someone to stop me before I speak again. Someone just did. The Biden administration move seemed to bring a more positive meaning to what Ronald Reagan said were the top 10 most terrifying words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. So I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, comments, and anything else you have to add about this story. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below and ring the bell, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.